Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Bennett, your spiritual counselor and psychic host for Metaphysically Speaking. Today, we are going to be talking about understanding God a little better. And that is a massive subject that could take the rest of my life. But different people on the planet have made it more understandable. And we're going to be talking about their points of view. The call number that you want to, no, that's my number. Where's the right number for calling in for the show?
The number would be 844-390-8255.
There you go. Okay, I've got this piece of paper. Oh, I took it off my desk to make it more easy for me to find things. So that's 844-390-8255. I will be taking questions, and here's what we do. You have to ask a metaphysical question first. Then you can ask your personal question. And don't try to say, well, how does metaphysics apply to my life? It doesn't work. You have to ask a specific question that's going to be of interest to everyone. So that's 844-390-8255. Okay, and if you are paying attention to the universe at all and the news, you know that things are going downhill worldwide very quickly. This is, and I feel it started with the election of Donald Trump, who, in my opinion, and if you talk to a Christian fundamentalist, he checks off every one of the things they have to say about the Antichrist. He is an Antichrist. And I'm sorry that Nostradamus didn't mention him, but he came out of left field, which evil does all the time. Never presents itself to you in a red suit and a pitchfork and a pair of horns on the head. It's always something, what do I always say? It's always something you think you need, or it presents itself in a manner in which you will accept their proposition. If anything seems too good to be true, or your gut is telling you something isn't right, run. I don't care how cute he is. I don't care how gorgeous she is. Run. Evil presents itself to you in a form that you will accept. And a lot of people accepted that thug. And what has he done? It's like we're having the Confederacy all over again. And interestingly, as I said last time, the states that are saying, oh, there's no problem with COVID, there's nothing here in the state, like Florida, which is overloaded, and Louisiana, which is being flooded out again. Those states have people who are governors and are basically morons, also in my opinion. So they are endangering the people who elected them and put them in the position of governorship that they're in. And this is what is part of the destruction of the civilization we are all living in now. Whether you're in a nightmare country, politically or economically or drought, or spiritually, I can't say spiritual, I say religiously, with the Taliban, who think they have their interpretation of Islam, which is not the interpretation of Islam. People all around the world are rising up to the anger and the evil, if that's who they are. If they don't know who they are, they're still responding because they don't know who they are. If you're past the age of 10 or 11 years old, you basically know who you are. I've even dealt with kids who sat in front of me at 8 years old. I'm thinking of one young boy. And he said, and his mother was at her wit's end because he just couldn't stand school. And he was constantly cutting classes. And where would she find him? In the library. So I said to her, before I said, don't bring him in, just save your money. The kid is too smart for classes. Okay, she brings him in anyway. And I said, so you don't like your classes? He said, they're fools. I've already read this stuff. I'm already on the Iliad. I'm doing Shakespeare. I said, how old were you when you did Shakespeare? I said, I was 11. I said, but I was reading the Bible at 5. He says, me too. So I said, clearly you're in the wrong school. clearly, and I said, I was in the library, I was reading books, I was reading the encyclopedias. I had very long hair and I used to sit under the hair dryer. Those are the days where you sat under a hair dryer with your rollers. I'd sit on the floor, put it on the couch, and read an encyclopedia. So we have people who are uneducated, who are in cult religions. Christianity, Judaism has their own crazy cults. Islam, we're all aware of that. Cults in Africa and African tribes, cults all around the world. Because, and they're led by men, which don't you think that's kind of extraordinary? Men who think that their penises are going to get larger if they gather more people around them who are going to support them. Whether it's Hitler, whether it's David Koresh with Waco, whatever it is and whoever it is, they think they're getting bigger and better because you're dumber and dumber. So therefore, those of us who are spiritual people do not go by somebody else. We go by our souls. And we look at the different aspects of the universe and say, okay, not okay, okay, not okay. And today we're going to be talking about different spiritualities from different religions. And since many of you are Christian who are listening to the show, or Jewish, and you know Jesus was Jewish as well, I cannot tell you that I had Christian fundamentalists tell me that Jesus was the first Christian and he founded Christianity. And I have to remind them that it didn't happen until 300 years after, sorry, making the dings, they're making, I have to show you something important, until after Jesus died, approximately, because they don't know exactly when Jesus died. There's a really good book you should get, and I forgot to pull it off my shelf. Jesus Lived in India. If you live in Europe, it's called Jesus Died in India. And they have a picture of his shrine, which has been taken care of for the last 2,000 years by a small group of Islamics. And if you read the Quran, Fatima, which is their name for Mother Mary, is mentioned more times than in the Bible. She was revered and respected as a healer, as well as Jesus. So tell that to a member of the Islamic fundamentalism and they'll fall down dead. Okay, you know I love to talk about pussycats and puppy dogs, which I will not do today, thanks to my producer. But one of my very favorite saints who lived in a time that we can all relate to is Saint Francis of Assisi. And this is a depiction of a beautiful piece of artwork that is in Italy in one of their museums. And he was drawn and painted in his lifetime so that they know he had a bald spot, little yarmulke on the back of his head. And they know that he was not all that tall, but they also know that he was a very kind, devoted man. He came from a very wealthy merchant family. His father was having conniptions because he wasn't joining, not only was he not joining the family business, but he was joining this crazy religion. And he was joining this religion as a renunciant. And I can't have that because I've got a big business and he's got to run it. Who am I going to turn it over to? So St. Francis was such a blessed soul that animals followed him, which is why he's called the patron saint of creatures, of animals. And pussycats followed him, wild dogs, stray dogs followed him, squirrels, rabbits, anything that was around Italy at the time. Birds followed him. When he was meditating, they would sit on his head, they'd sit on his legs, they'd sit everywhere around him, and all the creatures did as well. He also, after he was finished meditating, was recorded as not walking on the earth. He was floating a couple of feet above the ground. And then someone would say, St. Francis, Francis, Father Francis. And he'd say, what is it? And he dropped down to the ground. So he was a special, not even a Catholic, although he was Catholic, but he loved God so much that that was the focus of his life. And the focus of his grouping, his St. Francis of Assisi group, was helping the poor. And in those days, you didn't help the poor. Oh, my, you just kept them away. And it was his mission to gather blankets and clothing and food for the poor, humiliating his family. Too bad. The Catholic Church went along with it because he beseeched the local bishop and he said, look, what are they gonna think of the Catholic Church now if you disband us? I'm helping the people that you turn your back on. So while he was alive, they left his monastery alone. When he died, the bishop sent soldiers, not only dismantling the monastery, but killing most of the followers of St. Francis of Assisi, and the rest of them escaped, and confiscating the clothes and the food and all of the money. Yep. I don't have anything good to say about the Catholic Church, Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. So if you haven't seen the show before, that's it. They're all bathed in blood. And you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You live by blood, you die by blood. And that's what is beginning to happen. And as I've said before, the reason that the Catholic Church wants all the people from South America to come to the United States is because they're Catholic. And they will put people in office who are Catholics and try to force the Catholic Church agenda. You wouldn't like it anymore if it was the Jewish agenda or the Islamic agenda, because the United States is freedom from religion. This was not founded by Catholics, Jews, or Islamics. This was founded by people who are basically spiritual people, atheists, philosophers, and who wanted that as the background and the foundation, so that if you wanted to practice a religion, you could, but you wouldn't have to. Nobody had to go to church. The people decided to take it and make it their own and force it into Christianity, force it into whatever else they're forcing it into. This is a Christmas card I got years ago, and it's a little bit stylized because it has Mary, Joseph, and is that a good picture? Are we getting that right, Mr. Director?
Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, you bring it up just a little bit. Okay, perfect. Yep.
Okay, and you see baby Jesus, but you see a bunch of creatures around there. You see owls, you see pussycats, you see a puppy, you see little baby sheep, you see a squirrel. There's a rooster. And the idea is that, oh, there's a donkey, which was probably accurate because that's how they traveled in those days. We've heard a few Jeeps in the area. And to me, this is the birthing. The mother, the father, and the child. That is the true Trinity. In the Middle East, the tradition was that women were trash and women could be bartered and sold and gotten rid of, but the son was important. So they realized that they would be alienating women who they needed. I'm talking about the First and the Second Council of Nicaea. And that they needed women, so they couldn't say, well, it's okay that we abuse them. So we'll say that, oh, I don't know, the Holy Ghost is the third part of the Trinity. The Trinity in all religions is the Father, the Mother, and the child. The mother, the father, the child. In the Middle East, they did not have DNA. So they were usually people who attended the birth. All royal families had observers and observed the child coming out of the uterus, so they could say, yes, this is the one who's going to inherit the throne. So the true Trinity is the same thing as it is here on the planet and all the other planets I visited, the parents and the child. It doesn't matter if it's a boy, it doesn't matter if it's a girl. The parents and the child. That is the way life is created, with two people, a male and a female getting together, and then there's a child. So if Christianity would adhere to this, and it's in the Vatican library, boy, would I love to be in that library. It's in the Vatican library.
Therefore.
And so therefore, you're saying?
Yeah, therefore.
Oh, therefore, The Catholics know this full well, but they're saying, what do we do now? We've lied for 2,000 years. What are we going to come up with? How can we fix this? People are realizing this is crazy. You fix it, Catholics. Now, I showed this last year at Christmas time. This is somebody who set up their nativity scene at home. And you see who's sitting behind the nativity scene is a red pussycat, is observing the red nativity scene. Now, not to be outdone, this is my sweetie pie, who used to camp out in front of the nativity scene, and she's wearing her little Santa hat.
Bring it up a bit.
Bring it up like this.
Yep. There you go. A little more. There you go. Yep.
And there she is with her Santa hat. I'm finding it right. There she is. And there's the nativity scene behind her. That was her favorite spot. So we have Christianity, which wants you to think that it's a father, a son, and a ghost, forgetting the mother. Except the mother was always important, but not to the Catholics, because it's male dominated. People look at the history of this planet. Males who are the emperors, or the kings, or the priests. Catholic Church doesn't want any women serving any masses because that would validate women. I'll tell you what, let's get all the women off the planet, and then you make children. See how you do it that way. But a religion that understands the balance of the male-female energy of God is Buddhism, which came from Hinduism. Hinduism is far older than the basic Hindu person actually realizes. And they know this, and you could possibly know this, because on, I can't remember whether it was National Geographic or Smithsonian, last year and the year before, they had scientists sent to Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, to get into the caves that the monks used to climb the mountain to get into. I met many of these lamas over the years when I had my TV show, and they told me stories about their experiences. And you know, I love snow leopards. And even before I met the lamas, I loved snow leopards. But they only had a blanket, a wrap for the summer, a bowl, and a type of eating utensil that could be, you've seen people in Westerns and whatever, stabbing a piece of meat and eating it off a knife. They had something like that. And they had to find their own water. And there were plenty of mountain streams, but they had to go find it. And they had to find it in the snow. And they had to find it in feet of snow. And it was darn cold. They didn't have any portable heaters. And who did they find in the caves with them more often than not? A snow leopard. And every single one of the monks, of the lamas that I met and had on my show told me about their particular stories about waking up and feeling cuddled and realizing there were feet and there was a tail and breath was coming out the top of their heads, and they were being cuddled by the snow leopards. So when they were in these monk chambers, which were caves really, they discovered that there were paintings of green Tara. How is this? There we go.
That's good. Yep.
Okay. This is green Tara. And this is a smaller picture. I have a bigger one of her in my front of my office. And this is white Tara. Now it's the same energy, and there's also yellow Tara or golden Tara, who deals strictly in spirituality. So when you have a spiritual issue, you would go to golden Tara. Green Tara is known for healing, body, mind, and spirit. White Tara is known for emotional and spiritual healing. They discovered these beautiful, hand-painted images of green Tara all in these caves, and they're crumbling, and they're doing their best to document everything photographically, put it on digital tape, do everything they can, because they're thousands and thousands of years old. They predate Hinduism, and Hinduism is from Atlantis, which I will get to in a second, because we carry over from continent to continent, from civilization to civilization, from Lemuria to parts of the United States, from Atlantis to parts of the United States, Canada, Europe, Ireland, England, Scandinavia, down to the Mediterranean, etc. So Tara is the one who is loved and revered and is one of the most beloved aspects of God. Because here's what I always say: one God, female, male, one God. The duality is not a mystery. Imperfection, neither. That's the difference between the hermaphrodite, which shows both male and female sex organs, and what is the word? I forget. It starts with A. Androgynous, where there are no sex organs whatsoever, because that is the male and female energy of God in perfection. So therefore, you cannot have a male without a female. You cannot have a female without a male. And look at what's happened to the planet. It's so off balance, out of kilter, that of course it's skewering towards war, because that's what men like. There's too much testosterone. A well-balanced male doesn't want war. He wants peace. He wants calmness. He wants scientific achievements. He wants literary achievements. He wants all of the good things that make the planet a better place. He wants the environment to be stable and sustainable. But these guys with these guns standing on top of an elephant, I know what I'd like to do with them. Okay, before we finish talking about Hinduism, because it's a concept that most people, when I explain it, understand it. They're a little confused, but they understand it. But we've got a caller on the line. Caller, first name, and just give you your first name and your comment about metaphysics, and then you ask your personal question. Do we have the caller? Mr. Director?
A second. Oh,
Okay.
she disappeared. She disappeared.
Well, if you can call back, that would be great.
Yep.
Okay. Hinduism says God is so vast and so massive that we can't possibly understand God in 100 lifetimes. So what we'll do is look at the people who came here to visit and reset our planet as Atlantis was falling. And we'll look at them and we'll say, can we make you a god? Can we make you somebody we can look at to admire? We can say that green tar and white tar and golden tar are three aspects. How can you do better than body, mind, and spirit? They say that each god or goddess, because they understand the balance of the Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, represents a personality aspect or a physical aspect, if there was physicality in the God force. The best way I can describe the God force is a moving mist of intelligence, of love, of delight, of kindness, of mercy, of caring, of creativity, of love for all creatures. And that is so difficult to understand in one lifetime, which is also why we have reincarnation, which the Catholic Church never outlawed, by the way. They wanted it taught. And on the First Council of Nicaea, it was noted as to all the priests that wanted reincarnation taught. And when the second council came along, they or their followers were missing. Wonder what happened. So it was declared a heresy. So it was not declared an untruth. They just didn't want you to know about it. Why? Because if you understood that this was not the only lifetime, then you wouldn't be worried about what they thought. You'd be worried about what your soul is telling you. But all religions want you to do it their way. How can they all be right when they all have something different to say? Oh, the one thing that they always say is, oh, we always talk about kindness, we always talk about love, and you always start wars. So actions speak louder than words. So the Hindus said we should have different aspects. So we talked about the body, the mind, and the spirit with Tara. Ganesha, who many of you know as, and this might be hard to see, it's a gold statue. And I'm looking for something here. This is a gold statue of Ganesha.
I think it's a brass and no one comes to rob you.
Right,
Yeah,
because this was
that-
gold.
That's
This
pretty
was gold
clear.
people.
That's good. That's pretty clear.
This is an elephant head with a man's body. And down here, you're saying, if you're looking at it clearly, or you can see it, I'll tilt it a little bit, you're saying, going to say, that looks like a mouse. It is, or a little rat. Why? Linda, why would an aspect of God have a rat? Aren't rats destructive and awful and they bring the plague? Yes, but that's not the point. Ganesha removes obstacles. And so if you're finding that if you turn left, right, upside down, inside out, nothing's working, stop and say, A, is it supposed to work? And if you know that you just need to be persistent, you would ask Ganesha to help you through and remove the obstacles so you can accomplish your worthwhile goals. And Ganesha will bring prosperity. Because if you accomplish your goals, you'll have accomplished something that's important to you and bring you some type of prosperity. Also, Ganesha is famous for throwing a rock in your place or in front of your feet or blocking you in some way. Like 500 phone calls in a day, you don't have time to talk on the phone, that kind of thing. Because you are not supposed to accomplish exactly what you think you're supposed to accomplish. And you're supposed to sit back and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I misinterpreting? And if you listen in your meditation, you'll have it explained to you, or you'll see a picture forming the way it should be. And then you thank Ganesha and you say, thank you, God. I didn't realize that. I didn't see it. As a psychic, I can see things, but I can't see everything. Nobody can see everything. And we have free will. And you're free to say, I'm an atheist. I'd rather deal with an atheist than a fundamentalist. Because a fundamentalist is so programmed in, hardwired to something wrong. There's no, don't bother. There's no rational explanation. I would rather deal with an agnostic. And you say, well, what's the difference between an atheist and an agnostic? An atheist said there's no such thing as God. And if you look around the world today, you say, well, look at all the wars, look at all the atrocities, look at how they buy and sell women and traffic them and kill them. How could there be a God? How could a God allow that? Well, God allows that to a certain point. Because humans are supposed to use their common sense and their souls. The soul is what continues on after you drop the physical body. When you change your clothes, you're the same person. You're the same soul. You put on your pajamas, you put on an evening gown, you put on a tuxedo, you're still the same person. Your soul stays the same. Your physical body, your costume for every lifetime changes. And so the God force says, I made you right to begin with. You are part of my essence, part of the mist. And you've screwed up. And you get on a planet a certain amount of time for a certain amount of cruelties. And don't forget, with thousands of lifetimes, anybody who's suffering a cruelty, whether it's health, whether it's mentality, whatever it is, it was created, you created that in another lifetime. And this is solving and balancing that karma. Think of life like a seesaw or a scale of justice. And when it's finally balanced, it's over. It's like anger. Don't waste your time being angry for more than 5 minutes. Because that's 5 minutes out of your life you could have been doing something else. But fine, give it 5 minutes. And then say, bless the soul that harmed me. And bless me. Forgiving and forgetting are two different things. And the Hindus knew that. So do the Aborigines, so do the people of Hawaii. We're going to talk about Hawaiian spirituality. Everybody understands that you can be startled and you can be surprised, you can be shocked, you can be thrown off balance. But are you going to stay off balance, or are you going to start plotting and planning on how to get even? That's a waste of your life. But people do it. And so they're now creating a war within themselves and with this other person. If the other person doesn't even know anything about it, they're not bothered. The karma is no longer with them. It's with you. So it may sound cruel, but everything that's happening is happening because it's a rebalancing. And when you lose the anger and lose the need for vengeance, the karma is over. You will be confronted with it again, but in a slightly different way. But how do you respond to it then? Do you respond to it with godlike kindness and say the person is uninformed? The person is ignorant of spirituality, bless them? Or just say, I'm going to get that so-and-so. Which is a way that you would rather live? In a constant state of war or in a constant state of spirituality? So all these so-called gods and goddesses are different manifestations of Hinduism, or different manifestations, rather, of God's many personalities. When we talk about the male-female energy of God, and this is going to be Krishna, which most of you have heard of, and Radha. And his skin is blue because either A, that's the color it is on the planet he's from, or B, after Atlantis went down and we had the volcanoes and we had the earthquakes, the balance of oxygen was way down and it was very difficult to live. Talk to the people out west who can't breathe because of the fires. So if you don't get enough oxygen, you start turning what color? Blue. The woman he's with is Radha. Now, Krishna was not known to have any children on this planet. We don't know what's happened on other planets. And you say, well, if somebody's really God, if somebody's really an aspect of God, do they have children? Sometimes yes, as an example of the balance of the male-female energy. And Radha was his partner, but theoretically not a sexual partner, but a female balance to his male energy. Because the Hindus understand there's no male without female, no female without male. That's the way it is on all planets. Physical life and spiritual earth, and they create with their minds because they're not in physical bodies. And just as a little sideline, you wonder why the peacock flower looks like a flower to me, the peacock feather which you've all seen, represents the third eye. That is where I've told you should be focusing when you meditate. The third eye, repeating the sound of Om to yourself. Sitting up straight, palms open, or in a mudra. You can have a mudra like this or like this. Doesn't matter. Like this. But this is the third eye. And isn't it interesting that a country that focuses on the third eye in meditation would have a bird native that represents the third eye? So when you're thinking of Hinduism, you're not getting all different gods and goddesses taking the place of God. They're not taking the place of God. They're helping you understand the different aspects of God. They're helping you understand that we can't possibly know all of the qualities of the God force, the Heavenly Father, Divine Mother. Let's go to ancient Lemuria, which existed still at the time that Atlantis was being civilized, and finally went down in most places, but not all places. Japan was part of Lemuria. Western United States was part of Lemuria and British Columbia. The islands, the Hawaiian Islands, the Polynesian Islands, the Indonesian Islands, they were part of Lemuria. And the Hawaiians say that our motherland rests beneath the Royal Ocean. They're quite well aware of where their original civilization went in an earthquake, in tsunami. Now you've heard of Pele, the fire goddess. And is that angle okay, Mr. Director? This
Yes,
is
it's good. Yeah, it's good.
by Herbert Kahane, who is no longer with us, but he did some beautiful work on Pele, the goddess. And she is represented in three forms, which relate back to Christianity. But let me show you these actual photographs of the Kilauea blooming. And that looks like a profile. I'm looking at it. Okay, this would be the nose, etc. And there she is, like Mother Mary appears in the sky in different parts of the world periodically. These are actual certified photographs. And they say that Mother, Father, God is in all things. So do the Buddhists, so do the Hindus, so do the Aborigines, so did the ancient Celts. So do, for instance, the Dogon, which is an African tribe that were visited by Anubis. And he gave them the exact coordinates, and the exact coordinates are in the caves. They've had to relocate far further north and higher up elevation. But before that happened, they took pictures of the caves and they said, oh no, you've got Sirius slightly wrong. And then when they got better telescopes, they discovered that they had Sirius actually right. How'd that happen? So the planet where Anubis's people exist came to visit the Dogon tribe. And still today, they worship Anubis as a form of God. Are you beginning to see a repetition here? In Pele's family, and I have a magnificent poster downstairs where it has the whole family laid out. And her brother, the shark god, brother, the thunder god, sister, Mauna Lea, the mountain, volcanic mountain. And on in a description of what each one does and the relationship, etc. So Pele and her family represent the different aspects of God. From their perspective, mostly water and earth related, because They're islands. But they understand the male-female aspect of God. And Pele is shown in most of the artwork as the young woman I showed you, or they show her, this would be the maiden. Then the maiden is a girl who has not yet reached her period. Then when you get your period, you're considered a mother. And then when you stop your period, you're considered an elder, or the Celts would say a crone. The 3 stages of life. That is the 3 stages of life. The child, the producing person who can make babies and make a home, and then the grandparent. And they are very, very good to their elders, and they understand that their elders carry wisdom. So did the Celts understand that, etc. Buddhism is a variation of Hinduism. Remember, Buddha was a Hindu king. His kingdom was overtaken by a warring neighboring tribe who thought it was a good idea to burn the place to the ground. But Buddha wasn't there anymore, but he knew that was going to happen. And he married, produced a child, and then he talked one of the servants into taking him outside the quarters of the kingdom. His father would never let him out. And he saw some sick and hungry people. And then he saw some older people. And then he saw people who died. And he didn't know this existed because his father had young wives and he wore makeup so that Buddha would not know his father was aging. He wanted to protect him from life, which you can't be a leader if you're protected from life. So then he realized that all people get older, they get sick, and they die. And that it's important to focus on your soul. It's important to know what created all of this. How did it happen to be? So this is one of my favorite statues of Buddha. Very peaceful, very calm. Other brass pieces that I have. And this is what they call medicine Buddha. Same Buddha, but in the aspect of physical healing. Look, they didn't have penicillin, they didn't have all the modern medicines that they have today at that time. They had it before. We had it in Atlantis, we had it in Lemuria. But you think about AMA medicine, they didn't even wash their hands 100 years ago. Florence Nightingale, who was the founder of modern cleanliness, and said, clean up these hospitals, they're filthy. And since she was like from a very wealthy English family, they listened to her, and then they discovered that the guys weren't dying. Doctors, don't even wash their hands half the time when they go from patient to patient now. Now, hopefully they are with COVID, but they just would run from room to room. So I consider AMA medicine to be really primitive, focusing wonderfully on certain specialties, but basically primitive. Chinese medicine, the doctor is watching you come in the door because they know how you carry yourself. They know how your head is moving. They know how you seem to be breathing, whether or not you have certain problems. And they've got you half diagnosed before you come in the door. Indian doctors as well. Why? Because you're a whole being. You may have a headache, but it may be starting in your back. Maybe starting in your arm, maybe starting in your stomach. AMA medicine is still trying to figure that out. Now, you say, well, Linda, if they're so balanced, where's the female? And that is Avalokitesvara. And I have an amethyst hanging around her neck. Now, Buddhists being founded by, not Buddha himself. He said, meditate. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff. Don't worry about which God is which. Don't worry about who's who. Just meditate. And since men were running the religion, and he had intellectuals following him as a royal member of a royal household, it was different with Jesus because most of the people there were not educated, couldn't read, couldn't write. Although his family could, because he was a high priest, and his wife, Mary Magdalene, and his mother, Mary, and his father, Joseph, were priests and priestesses in the Temple of Jerusalem. And as a descendant in the house of David, he would have had to, he was the first son, he would have to have been a rabbi. That was the rule. So he was a high priest. And so therefore, and Mary Magdalene was a high priestess who probably studied with his mother. The name Mary is one of the names that you take when you're going to a religious life. Catholics still do it today. Greek Orthodox do it. The Islamics do it. Many of the Jewish religions do it. Some of them don't. Different factions of Judaism. And that simply means that you're letting go of your past, of your childhood, of your high school, of gardening, whatever you did before, and you're focusing your energy on learning about God. Interesting, the Catholic Church talks about heaven and hell. And where did they get that concept? Where did they get the concept that you shouldn't destroy the physical body because it'll rise again out of the grave and into the heavens? Well, I think that's pretty well stupid and pretty well acknowledged as being stupid because we've seen enough mummies to know that's not the case. And you dig up a grave and you find a skeleton in there, and that's not rising from the grave. But that idea came from Egypt. Remember, Moses was really Tutmosis, which was the terminology for an Egyptian priest. And Moses started Judaism. The Egyptians did not have slaves. That's all a myth spun around, just like the Catholics spun around the idea of poor Mary out in a hole somewhere giving birth. That wouldn't have happened because they were a member of the royal family. They knew Jesus was going to be important. They knew he was scheduled to marry an important wife. And so therefore they had people with him. Remember when Jesus was missing when he was 12, the family looked all over for him and finally found him at the caravans and said, well, of course, I'm at my father's business. They were not poverty stricken. But as I've said before, they still have the same houses today that they use. Half of them are for people, the other half is for the animals, because it gets darn cold in the winter and at night in the desert. So she was born in a house. He was born in a house. She was probably born in the same house, in another house. Her mother, Anne, was known as a priestess and a healer. So therefore, this is a long lineage of healers and priests and priestesses in Jesus's family. Mary Magdalene was very well known as a teacher, a spiritual leader. And of course, he would marry her. So you think to yourself, okay, in Hawaii and Indonesia and in the Pacific, they have this 3 stages of life. The Celts also had the same thing. They were the ones who called the grandmother the crone. But the Catholics came up with the idea of don't cremate your body from the Egyptians. That's what all the mummy stuff is about. They remove the organs and they put resin, they put all kinds of things inside the body to preserve it. They wrap it up, stick it in a coffin. 2,000 years later, they dig it up and it's all crumpled. The Catholics got their idea from the Egyptians. The Catholics got the idea of heaven and hell from the way the Egyptians evaluate the heart that has been removed and is in a canopic jar. Anubis takes you to a judgment area, and all the judges and the evaluators from all different planets are there watching you. And they have a scale. And Mot, who is Divine Mother in the Egyptian theology, has taken one of her feathers and put it on one side of the scale. And she's pure and she's kind and she's spirit evolved divine. And they take your heart and put it on the other side of the scale. And they feel the heart has the emotions, the thoughts, the actions, a memory of everything. And if you're an evil person or if you're mean, boom, the heart will crash down, the feather will go up and it'll go back to Mot. And there's a crocodile waiting to eat your heart because you don't deserve to go into the heavens. And you're gone. Your soul is gone. Won't reincarnate. It's gone forever. That's where the Catholics got the idea of judgment. So you look and say, well, where did this come from? And let's look at the civilizations before. They get their ideas from someplace. So my suggestion is, regardless of what your religious leanings are,
5 minutes.
say to yourself, is God Catholic? I'm going to tell you no. God's not Jewish. God's not Baptist. God's not Islamic. God is not a religion. That is man-made. If you want to get a hold of your body, mind, and spirit, if you want to get a hold of yourself as a being, focus on developing your soul so that you can understand what you're here for. You're here to become a better being. And when you look at some of the ancient religions, remember, it wasn't Adam and Eve, it was Adam and Lilith, by the way. And the Bible portrays her as a monster. She was the goddess of watching out for children. She was the goddess of hunters if they went out at night, because there were no lights. All you had was your torch. And if you want to know how dark it is, go out in the middle of the desert, go in the mountains and walk around. Oh, you're going to bump into yourself or maybe a bear. But if you say to yourself, let me look at the ancient ways of doing things, it was simplistic and it was spiritual. You've heard of the tree of life, and this is a representation of Divine Mother in the tree of life. She, along with earthly trees and bushes and flowers and seeds, creates life. If you want to know about your soul, this is what you should look like. Your soul should be glowing. Golden white and peach and pink. This is what your soul should be looking like and does look like if you're a kind and loving person. And if you meditate more, that is what you will look like. That is your soul, that is your aura. That is what survives your physical body. Doesn't matter what you do with it. I told my daughter I want to be cremated and put in the ocean. And don't think you're going to put me in a pool somewhere. She wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't think we should be taking up more space with more cemeteries just because the religion says you should. The earth could use more soil. And it'll also prevent hauntings. I wouldn't haunt anybody, but that's one of the problems with many of the beings who were haunting people.
2 minutes.
They are attached to their physical bodies. They want to climb back in and finish what they want to do. And sometimes it's just very benign and lonely and lost and sad. And sometimes it's cruel because they blame people. And since they only have a limited knowledge, because when you die, you're just like walking from one room to the next. You have the same consciousness. You can only see to the level that you are in. You cannot see a higher level. So you're still looking for the people who harmed you. Do you want to do that? Or do you want to say, let them go in light? I'm a spark of the divine. This is what I want to be, a radiant beam of light. It's your choice. And the best way to do it is to sit quietly and meditate, not walking. That's walking and contemplating. Sitting quietly, hands open or in a mudra, focusing right above the nose between the eyebrows, and to your sit with your eyes closed, say Om, Om Mani Padme Om, which means the jewel and the lotus, or the Heavenly Father, Divine Mother together. And I promise you, start with 5 minutes, work to 10, work to 20. Every day will be different. And you will see a difference in yourself. You'll see yourself feel a little clearer, a little cleaner, a little softer, more patient. And you're realizing that you're becoming more godlike. Your diet will improve. Your focus in life will improve, maybe even change. You will be the reason you came here to the planet. The reason you came here is to go back home to the God Force. And remember, if you just open up your hearts and minds to God's universal truth, you're going to know that God and the angels are always with you. Stay with us. I'm Linda Bennett.